This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 9, Episode 7. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network of shows, brought to you by KSG Armory Holsters. Today is Friday, August 18th, as of the recording of this episode. And I am your host, Riley Bowman. And today I have with me our producer and co-host, Matthew Maruster.
Hello, hello.
And the crowd goes wild. Always for Matthew.
Right.
Today we have I think a fun episode. I don't know. We're going to talk about some stuff I think is interesting. We're calling this the 5 interesting and or silly industry trends. Some things that Matthew and I were discussing, things that have been observed recently in, I guess, the quote unquote industry. And I say quote unquote industry because, well, what is exactly the industry? And I think pretty broadly when I use that terminology. If you like guns, you own guns, you carry guns, you shoot guns. Maybe you're not even really into guns, but I don't know, do other self-defense related things. To me, all those things kind of feel like sort of part of the same community, if you will. But we're going to talk about 5 observations we made about some trends is about the only word I could come up with. So this will be, I don't know, maybe some of you will agree with this. Maybe you'll disagree. Maybe we'll bring up some things you hadn't even noticed or considered. Either way, it should be an interesting conversation for today. So today's episode, by the way, is sponsored by CCW Safe, which is our choice for the best industry self-defense legal coverage. Please consider using them for your own protection. And you can use the discount code CC Podcast to save 10%. And our Guardian Nation members can save even, I think it's 20%. So please consider CCW Safe. And also today's other episode sponsor is barrelblock.com. That's barrelblock with a K, BARELBLOK.com. And that's the best, the safest, the most responsible option for dry fire practice. Consider using a barrel block today. We'll talk some more about those here in a little bit, but let's go ahead and jump right into the episode content. So here's, I guess I'll go ahead and list them out. These are the 5 things that we're going to talk about today. First is off-body carry. And particularly we're noticing like a trend, people carrying in fanny packs again, which was like super hip back in the 90s, and maybe even in the early 2000s a little bit. But so that seems to be making a comeback. And we're going to also talk about, this is the title I have, training in full kit or die. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Also, superior staccatos. The staccato or 2011 style pistol seems to be, really becoming popular, and also enclosed emitters or bust. And then finally, we'll talk about what I'm calling here tribalism of thought. All right, so those are our topics today. We'll just go through each of these one by one. Matthew, you're the one that brought up the off-body carry thing, so let's break that one down.
Yeah, dude. You kind of set it up with the fanny pack thing, but I just noticed this in probably the last, I don't know, year or two. A lot, maybe not even. I almost think that it has something to do with the enigma or these like somewhat like non-traditional holster carry that isn't attached to a belt. So I don't know, maybe it has nothing to do with it, but it seems to kind of coincide. But I've noticed, there was a time where if you even said, or, even hinted that you might consider off-body carry, you were like a pariah in like every circle known to man. But it was never my primary or something that I would say like, hey, this is the ideal way to carry a gun. Especially, certainly for women, concealed carry purses were pretty popular, and because of their clothing, they might not typically wear belt and things like that. So off body carry was always kind of like a little bit more practiced, I think, with women, but men, I saw, there were satchels and things like that, but it seems like in the past year or so that I've seen a lot more companies making concealed carry satchels, concealed carry like the fanny pack, bags, backpacks, all kinds of different things. And I was never super, I wasn't jazzed about off body carry, but I wasn't like the hard line. I wasn't maybe like anti off body carry enough for some people. I was like, hey, it's not something that I typically do, carry that way a method. But if that's something that works for you and you've taken the proper precautions to have something that's actually duty purpose for that, and it can, it has a holster inside, you're not just chucking it in a bag, those types of things, then, if you can make it work. But it seems like that's kind of like I don't want to say a primary mode of carrying, but it seems to be very popular. So just something I saw. I don't know your stance on it, but I just thought it was
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, what I've noticed is, and again, like you said, in recent history, certainly in the last year, a number of firearm industry influencers who on like Instagram and stuff been, posting some content of them carrying a gun in a fanny pack. And I think so. The first thing is we got to ask the question: okay, is this a firearm industry trend, or is this a general fashion trend? Because I'll be honest, at first I didn't know. Like I'm not paying it, that close attention to what's going on in New York and Paris and like these or London, kind of these hubs for like fashion and design and stuff like that, right? Because obviously, if this was more of just a firearm industry fashion trend, then that's no bueno, right? Because like if suddenly we were like, hey, let's start throwing fanny packs on again, and the rest of the world's like, that dude, that's so 1994, like you're gonna stand out like a sore thumb. Um, so it turns out, yes, the fanny pack is back in, which is so funny because I remember when it was a thing, way back in my childhood, basically in my childhood and into my early teen years. And so, in fact, funny little anecdote. Uh, this is like my one little embarrassing Riley moment. I- we didn't have like gaming consoles in my household, but there was a time when I had a Game Boy and I had the fanny pack for the Game Boy, like the official
Nice.
like Game Boy, fanny pack case or whatever that existed around that time. And man, I just remember thinking how cool that was.
Those were, man. I'll tell you my fanny pack story since you opened up. I remember I I don't know if you guys remember this, but like it was a windbreaker jacket that you could fold into itself, and it had a
Mm,
fan, like, so it folded into a fanny pack,
yes,
and then it had a little clip,
yes,
and that was like, I thought I was like a transformer. I thought it was like super cool. Like, how do they come up with this stuff? And,
right,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it takes me back. So yeah, the fanny pack is back in now. So I'm amused by it. That's for sure. Um, you touched on some points about just talking about off body carry generally as an idea. I think it's a valid option. I don't think of it personally as a everyday concealment option
Mhm.
because I don't think it's ideal. Uh, but for some of you out there, maybe you do. Maybe because of your personal lifestyle, circumstances, environment that you find yourself in, whatever, and just the way you live your life. Maybe off body carry is your personal solution. We'll have to figure that out for ourselves. Obviously, off body carry comes with some drawbacks. Um, and as far as the accessibility and the speed of access of the firearm, security is an important one. Some things you've already noted and touched on. There's drawbacks to carrying on your person too, which mostly is a comfort thing, and then perhaps a concealment, thing as well. But definitely, we're of the mind that on the body carry is is more gooder, more better. So, um, but as long as we're, I guess not, because remember, concealment's not just about hiding a gun on your person, but also like kind of disguising yourself. Like the way I'm dressed today is not ideal concealed carry, but I wasn't particularly concerned about it because I'm not going anywhere publicly. Basically came straight here to the office from my house and back and and back again. And so I like to dress how I want to dress, and I'm wearing Firearm Trainers Association hat and shirt. But if I was going out on a date, it's Friday, go on a date with my wife tonight, I would dress in a manner that where my dress isn't a giveaway as to the fact that I'm a gun guy and I'm carrying concealed and that kind of thing. So here's what I would say with respect to off body carry. Um, there are definitely bags and packs and satchels that are very tactical looking. And if that's your solution for concealed carry, guess what? It's not a concealed carry solution. You might as well be carrying openly, because your bag or whatever is the giveaway. Like it's the same thing as, hey, strap the gun on my hip. I've got this super duper tactical bag with Molly all over it, in multicam or something. Like, hello, gun guy probably has something inside of value. Um, and that's important to consider. Like you might not think it's a big deal, but it can be a big deal. uh, just the same reason when I was heavy into photography and doing like photography excursions and stuff, um, I gave some thought to the bags that I was carrying photography gear in, because that's a high target item. It's the photography gear is high dollar, it's expensive, and there's a huge secondary market for it. And there's plenty of stories of people being targeted, having their photography bags, backpacks, etc., taken from them, because it's a prime target. And so, just as it can be if you're rolling around with a pistol or a small sub gun, or folded up AR or something in your all tacticaled out, Molly bag, that's the same thing as carrying openly. So give that some thought. And then here's the other thing with respect to the fanny pack. So if you're rolling around in a fanny pack and you're also wearing the khaki cargo pants and plaid shirt and all this, and like a hat with gun type or tactical looking logos on it. Um, the fanny pack is also a tell and a dead giveaway. Like nobody's gonna be fooled by that. But meanwhile, if you're dressed in a fashionable manner, like that's consistent with how the in crowd is dressing right now, while you're also carrying a fanny pack with your gun in it, that'll probably blend in. So just give that some thought. A fanny pack does not automatically mean you're hiding your gun if the rest of how you're dressed is still tactical. So there's my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and fine. I'll just my as you were saying that, my brain went to, we say this a lot about like traditional carry or whatever with holsters. Um, the Perhaps there has been a little bit better innovation as far as off body carry options, as far as accessibility and being able to mount a holster in there and things like that. So perhaps you have something that is more functional than it was 4 years ago, when it was more of just a fanny pack and we happen to slip a gun in there, and now it's more purpose built. So perhaps it's a little bit better
Yeah.
option than it was before.
I'm glad you touched on that, because that is an important consideration with respect to off-body carry. Is don't be just chucking guns in bags that aren't designed for that or that you haven't planned for in some way. Um, yeah, just having a gun tucked away in a fanny pack is by itself not a solution. But having something that's purpose built, maybe has a Velcro panel in there with a holster attached or mounted to it in some fashion so that it's still one protecting trigger guard, preventing inadvertent discharges, and that includes when you reach into the bag to grab the thing in the first place. Right? Don't think that protecting the trigger and the trigger guard isn't only about protecting it from outside, you know, environmental uh, uh, factors, but also about the fact that you're reaching into a pouch, into a pocket, into a bag, and you yourself in if that gun isn't exactly where you last left it, there's a pretty good chance that as you reach for it, you might actually inadvertently hit the trigger. Okay,
Mhm.
so make sure it's a valid, purposely built, designed bag that you're using for your off body carry. It'd be where I'm going to leave this.
Right on.
Trend number two. And I kind of put some of this in the more of like a silly category, a silly trend. But I don't want anybody to get too offended by that because I know some guys take this kind of stuff seriously. But here's what trend number two is: training in full kit. All right. And what do we mean by that? Kit meaning like, you got you're dressed to the nines as far as all the tactical goodness. You got your battle belt on, you got your retention, your level 2, level 3 safari land, you got your taco mag pouches, and then you've got your plate carrier with, all of that decked out, pouches galore, IFAC, um, actual plates perhaps in the plate carrier, right? I mean, that's the point of a plate carrier. Your radio, all this stuff, right? So a trend I've kind of seen, Matthew, is uh, that I mean, this is not anything new particularly, but some of it I think is kind of this attitude within the community. And I've observed it specifically in kind of some of the like online groups, Facebook groups, online forums, a little bit in social media, just in comments and things as people are conversing amongst themselves. But basically, the attitude that, yo, bro, you ain't trained unless you're training in full kit, man. And it's like, um, and I'm kind of amused by that. And like, so here's my attitude, Matthew, is that I'm mostly interested in being trained and prepared for the most likely scenarios and contexts that I will find myself in. Okay. And what that is I mean, I, I'm a 40 now. It's hard to say sometimes. It's nothing new for you. I'm a now 40-year-old, so middle-aged father of five, married, living the suburban life. And yeah, I'm not training for World War III. And I'm not saying it's not important to learn some of those things and to practice that from time to time and to understand the tactics involved. But the context that's most relevant to me is what what gets me home safely from. I mean, I'm here in the company office. What gets me home 12 minutes away to my house between here and there? What protects me and my family and those I care about in and around my property, at the grocery store, the gas station, the restaurant I take my hot wife to tonight for a date or whatever. Okay. That's where I'm most likely to need some sort of skills, defensive related skills. Okay. But meanwhile, like I see these groups of guys uh, that spend their weekends dressed up in all the tactical gear, wearing full kit as it would be described, running their ARs with low power, low variable power optics, with even night vision sometimes, uh, helmets, ballistic helmets, all of that, right? And like, and if you call that out as far as like, and I mean, I've gotten involved in some in some discussions on this. Like, I remember to one guy I said, "Yo, when's the last time that you just practiced for the concealed carry type, environment?" "Oh, bro, like this is super important, man, because like the tyrants are trying to tear our country down, and like World War III will be upon us before we know it. So we got to be ready for that when that time comes." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm not going to deny that this country has some serious problems, and that there's some problem people out there for sure. And that, I mean, is it possible that we could find ourselves in a civil war or fighting against China or Russia or something like that? Sure, all of that is possible. But what is way more likely and way more relevant is the fact that on my way home tonight, I'm not saying this is the case because I already told you I'm going straight home. But if I had to stop at the gas station and some dude, tries to carjack me right then and there, you know, like that's way more likely than me needing to practice on a weekly or even monthly basis, small unit tactics, urban fighting in urban environments, CQB, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that that stuff isn't important. And I'm not saying, like, I do think that how much is the question here, but should civilians at least have the option of knowing and understanding tactics that are more of a warfare type tactic? Yes, I think civilians have the right and privilege to be able to know and learn and study and train and practice that. But some dudes take it too far, and that's the trend I'm commenting on.
Yeah, and I can see that, and like I think, as I think about this, I there's it's all about priorities, and for me, I only have a certain amount of time to train. I only have a certain budget. I'm 47, so I have a little bit
Getting close to that
less.
5-0 mark. Woo!
And right, almost. um so I have, there are other things that I have to divide up my time as I get older, and like, so yeah, I think that it's definitely something that if you want to do that, certainly if that's part of your job description, you have to do that. Of course, we're not talking about that, but like, I think for me, my only issue with it, I don't have a problem with people buying gear, training, doing whatever. But like when you ask them, like, hey man, like, why do you have all this gear? They never say, well, it's just fun. Like, it's
Yeah,
just fun
right.
to put it all on and like run through these classes. But yeah, like learning that stuff is good. And we all understand that. But no, it's always like this noble, like, no, I'm not doing it for the fun factor. And it's like, come on, man. Like, it sort of, you are, right? Like, you got to admit that some of it is just fun. It's like we did that when we were kids, and part of the reason why I wanted to go into the Marine Corps and be in the infantry was like, I was like, man, that's cool. Like, I didn't know, and some of the stuff was fun. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was fun. And but so I don't have a problem. I just think, like, just be honest and say, hey man, it's fun. Some of it like is a little overkill, overboard. Like, I probably won't ever, be repelling. So I don't need like all these, like, I don't need to buy like a $700 pair of boots with like, inner liner that won't wear down when I'm repelling and fast, like fast roping and doing all this stuff. But it's like, if it's fun, it's fun. Like, just, and you
Mhm.
have the money and you want to do it, go for it, man. Like, I'm all for it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I mean, we all have like our different interests and hobbies and stuff, and for some people, I think that is, I mean, just like competition shooting for me is a very passionate hobby of mine, one that at least coincidentally I think helps support, certainly on the shooting skill side of my endeavors in concealed carry oriented protection. But it is a hobby, and it's something I enjoy doing. And I think that there are definitely guys where like getting together with the boys on the weekend, dressing up in full kit and running around on a range or out in the hills and shooting stuff up while they practice comms on the radios and small unit tactics and maneuvers and all that. Like, cool. if that's, I mean, if it's for fun and for like that's where you spend your money and your time as a hobby, yeah, be honest about that. And the cool thing is, yeah, does it have some side benefits as well? Absolutely. I guess the only thing I'm saying is what's more likely? You needing all of that stuff, all that kit, all that gear to, survive tomorrow? Probably not. You're probably going to need something a lot more relevant to an everyday context. And so, yeah, be honest with yourself. So that's all I got to say about that.
Yep. Yep.
Before we go any further, today's first episode sponsor, as mentioned earlier, is CCW Safe. As we mentioned, that is our choice for the best in industry coverage on legal matters. If you want to learn something really fascinating, you can go to CCW Safe's blog. You can look up their whole series they did talking about the Stephen Maddox case. We've talked about it a bunch. We've had Stephen on the podcast before to share his story. And I know that that's not the only time that they've been involved in such things, but it's one of the most prominent ones. And to my knowledge, still the only uh, uh, self-defense case that actually made it all the way through to the end of in Stephen's case, successful acquittal verdict jury trial that was also covered by one of these types of programs, and CCW Safe stood by him all the way through all of that. Evidence of the fact they stand by their members, even in difficult cases. Speaking of which, their National Trial Counsel, Don West, and also Sean Vincent, that works over there, two very experienced guys. Don West, best known as one of the two primary attorneys that defended George Zimmerman, and has also been involved in other high-profile cases. Don West will be teaching and doing a lecture together with Sean Vincent at our Guardian conference in a month. So that'll be worthwhile. You'll want to be there. You should come to the conference regardless, but you should look forward to coming and listening to Don share his wealth of experience and knowledge on the matter, as well as Sean Vincent over there at CCW Safe. Again, use the discount code CC Podcast to save 10% off a membership at ccwsafe.com today. Next trend, Matthew. I'm going to throw it at you. I think this was one that I brought up, but I think that you probably have seen some of this as well. I have this listed as superior staccatos, or talk about the rise of the resurgence of the 2011 style pistol. 2011, by the way, for those that do not know, is a trademarked name by the company that is now known as Staccato, and so their guns are known as 2011s. Everybody else, technically by law, to not violate a trademark, has to refer to theirs as double stack 1911s. But we pretty colloquially use the term 2011 to mean double stack 1911. Staccatos, I see them all over the place now.
Yeah. I think part of it is that 1911s and maybe even DASA guns, steel frame guns are kind of, I don't know if they ever, I'm not saying they ever went away, but like kind of coming back into popularity in concealed carry in certain circles or whatnot. And certainly like the 1911 platform is well known, it's beloved, right? And so when you get something that's like, oh, well, we have that, but now we have this like new and improved that, and it's better capacity, all kinds of stuff, right? They also, do a very good job of marketing, and very like, appeals to hey, this is a duty gun, like cops can use this, and this is, it's not like, hey, this is your grandfather's 1911, throw it in a holster, and so the marketing's really cool, really good. And and they're very popular. And I'm not saying anything, like, I don't own one. My buddy owns one. He loves it. I know people that love them, um, but they're expensive. And for me, like, Shark Tank, like, for that reason, I'm out. Like, I can't afford that high price of a gun. But yeah, there certainly seems to be a very the idea that the staccato is the superior 2011 or 1911 double stack 1911 out there. So
Yeah, and really the other thing is, I mean, it's become so trendy as of late that a lot of people, I think, I mean, this is just my observation, and this is me talking to, friends of mine, people in the industry I know, cops, even some LE dude or military guys. Maybe not necessarily like thinking of it from the perspective of like carrying it. Obviously, the M17, M18 are now the uh, duty weapons of choice of the military now. Um, but a lot of folks, I mean, I had a friend just recently tell me, "Yeah, I'm going to buy a 2011." It's like, "Oh, cool, man. Like, sounds good." And I have no problem. Like, I'm not going to judge anybody for buying whatever guns they want. Like, that's the whole point of this being America, and you have all kinds of options. Like, buy the guns that I guess that you like, that you enjoy, that you believe gives you the best performance, whatever it is that's important to you. In his case, he's a pretty skilled shooter, so it's like, nice, man. Like, cool, enjoy, get a staccato, go shoot. I'm sure you'll do well, right? But here's why I brought this up and why I even listed as one of these, five interesting and silly industry trends is what I feel like I am seeing from time to time from certain people and from certain groups of people, Matthew, is people feel like I got to go buy a 2011 or a staccato because like that's the next thing that I need. Like that's going to help me get over the hump that I'm currently struggling to get over or whatever my skill. Like the gun's just such a superior platform to the modern striker fired pistol, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's easier to shoot. Uh, Better recoiling, better trigger, especially better trigger, right? That's usually what I hear from people is, well, I just, like it's such a great trigger, and that's going to be a huge difference maker to my shooting ability. Which, there's certainly something to be said for having a really good trigger on a gun, which, by the way, the staccato trigger is not bad, but a real nice high end custom 2011 or 1911 has a way better trigger. Just saying.
mhm,
Anyway, um, but here's my concern, Matthew, is people spending $2,000 to $3,000, which by the way is low end on the spectrum of 2011s out there in the market. And frankly, like I mean, I know that Springfield came out with the Prodigy, and that kind of has introduced an interesting variable into the market. In that, hey, here's a $1,400 double stack 1911. Is I think the jury's still out as to whether it's worth that or not. A lot of guys I know say they got to put about $500 to $900 into a Prodigy just to get it to be reliable and to run the way they want it to run and to not have long term issues and so forth. Really, for a while now, the staccatos have been, and they're about 2,200 to $2,500 for the common 2011 style pistol that Staccato puts out. um, that's kind of bare bones minimum of what you're going to have to spend to get a decently running, operating, reliable double stack 1911.
mhm, mhm,
And beyond that, you're talking, Nighthawk Custom, Wilson Combat, um, Chambers Custom, et cetera. A number of these like higher, sort of mid-level to or semi-custom to full-on custom. You're talking 4 to 8 grand for one of these guns, right? But anyway, a Staccato's still going to run you the better part of $2,500.
mhm,
And so the concern is what's going to make you actually better as a shooter? Spending $2,500 on a Staccato or spending $550 on a brand new Gen 5 Glock 19 or Glock 17, and then buying a couple thousand rounds of ammo, and then still having surplus out of that, say, $2,500 to $3,000 budget, to then go take like three quality, full on, like 2-day classes with reputable instructors.
Yeah.
And and what I just said there, that's what's going to honestly get you to where you want to be as a shooter, not the staccato or the high end 2011.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just goes to me, the whole question again just goes to like um, what is what is the motivation and what is the thought process behind doing that? And this isn't a question of like you don't have the right to do this or anything. It's just something that I've learned is like it's very easy to get caught up in like, hey, this thing is going to make me a better shooter, or this is really cool. Even if it doesn't make me a better shooter, it just is cool, and it's I want it. And before you know it, like we're spending a lot of money on things rather than maybe spending it on training or and so again, I'm not saying that nobody has a right to do any of these things or anything. You certainly do. Just
That's
just
like,
thinking out loud. If you have a reason, and then listen to like people that I don't know, half of what about 1911s, and someone like Brian Eastridge, we could get on here and he could put us to shame about all the things he knows. Get with somebody like that, and if you're going to make a big purchase like that and say, hey, is this just marketing, or what do I want to invest my money in? Should I get this or should I get that? And somebody who really knows what they're talking about can help you tremendously.
people will sometimes, observe that, I'm a pretty good shooter. Um, and I mean, I do pretty well, right? And we know that. Um, Most of my growth to getting to where I am as a shooter happened with bare bones, stock Glock 17 and 19s over the period of about 2016 to 2019. That was most of that growth, most of that learning that occurred, skill development, all of that happened with bone stock Glocks. And so, and like to this day, I don't know a 2011. I mean, I wouldn't turn one away. And I've certainly thought about like, hey, that'd be kind of cool, to have one of those and play around with it, but not in any serious capacity for me. It's like, yeah, okay, if number one, the price is right, the money is right, like I've got the money, and um, and that the stars align basically. But otherwise, you know, bone stock Glock pistols is where most of my hard work was, where I cut my teeth. And then I moved over to run the SIG P320s, and for a while there too, my SIGs were stock, and I mean, I ran a stock P365 for a good while as a everyday carry piece. You know, I can get good
Mhm.
work done with that gun too. It's a very capable gun for its size. So point is the trend here we're commenting on is the tendency for people to spend a bunch of money, because I mean, $2,000 to $3,000 on a single gun is that's not small change. Uh, that or buy a bunch of ammo and training. I would take the second thing.
Mhm.
There you go.
There you go.
Today's other episode sponsor is Barrel Block. Barrel Block is a simple polymer device you insert through the chamber of your gun. It goes all the way down the barrel and out the muzzle end. You can trim it to your custom length, whatever you desire, based on whether it's a 3.1 inch P365 or a 5.25 inch, Glock 34 or whatever. You can trim that barrel block to what you need. Have a visual indicator that in fact the barrel block is installed, and conduct yourself safely and responsibly in dry fire practice. These are used by law enforcement and military organizations and agencies across the country, throughout the world, even. In some cases, some of them are using them for conducting themselves in tactical training, as far as practicing tactics, movement through structures, room clearing, building clearing, et cetera, et cetera, so they can go through that in a safe manner, in a safe environment, with no possibility of rounds entering the chamber and being able to be discharged. In fact, it was just yesterday that there was an incident in Phoenix where a
Mhm.
federal law enforcement officer shot a fellow officer in a training exercise. And I saw just today, Matthew, that down in California, a Marine was shot
Mhm.
during low light or over nighttime training.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was, I didn't see exactly if that was at Pendleton or somewhere else, but it was, I know I saw it pop up today on my news feed.
Mhm.
So accidents in training happen, unfortunately, way too frequently than they should. And barrel block is, I mean, it's not the only way, but it is a great way to ensure that, particularly during some of these uh, more dry fire oriented practices and trainings. If you want to avoid having mistakes and accidents occur, consider using a barrel block today. Barrelblock.com.
That's right.
All right, we got two more things here and not too much time here. So, enclosed emitters or bust. So this is the next trend. I'll introduce it and throw it back over to you, Matthew. Red dots already, I think some people probably still even to this day think are a trend. I guess you could say it's a trend. Some think of red dots on pistols still being a fad, and I don't think that's the case. I think the evidence is pretty solid that red dots are not going away on pistols. I think they are here to stay, and that technology is only going to further continue to evolve and get better, and in a lot of probably very interesting and exciting ways. I can't wait to see what we're going to find on top of pistol slides in 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It's going to be probably really, really fascinating. Um, but the trend I'm talking about here is this attitude, and I see it quite commonly in some of the, like especially when serious gun guys are talking about red dots on pistols. There's a lot of them where the attitude is, I ain't putting it on my gun unless it's an enclosed emitter. And what do
Mhm.
we mean by an enclosed emitter? What they really mean is that the window of the window and the emitter. Okay, the window is the reflector, actually, right? Because you have an emitter that emits the red or green light that then bounces off of the glass of the actual optic window and then bounces back to your eye where you perceive this red or green dot. Um, an enclosed optic is the one where all of that, the emitter, the window, is completely enclosed and encased within a box that's sealed. And the idea there being that, it's harder to, like, you're not going to get dust, dirt, mud, water, snow, etc., debris in to where it can interfere between emitter and glass and eyeball.
Mhm.
And so the attitude that, hey, I ain't touching it, I ain't putting it on my gun unless it's a enclosed emitter optic on my pistol. And I understand, like, there's definitely some strong, reasons
Mhm.
to have an enclosed emitter. And I think it's a great idea, especially for very, very serious users that are especially carrying openly. And I'm
Right.
talking about police and military. But, obviously the police are the ones we're going to see the most examples of, especially on the streets. I think an enclosed emitter is a good idea
Yep.
in those especially if it's an environment where you are exposed to the elements on a regular basis. Uh,
Mhm.
so but my opinion on this is I don't think it has to be a this or that, meaning I ain't putting an optic on my gun unless it's an enclosed emitter. Hey, I'm running an open emitter, meaning my window, the glass, the emitter itself, that's all exposed. Can it get obstructed? Can there something get in there? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But my
Yeah.
context is very different than, say, a street cop.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the key. That's just the key question is what is the purpose? And if you want to, certainly you can over engineer something, or you could go like, hey, I might not need it, but um, I'd rather get this because if I do carry it openly or whatever, that I mean, you can make that argument for anything. But I think the big question is just like, okay, are you going to carry this concealed? All right. Do you carry it openly? Okay. Are you carrying it for duty purposes? Are you likely to, if it's in a duty holster, you get in a fight, you're rolling around, debris gets caught in there, whatever. Like you can think of a whole bunch of different scenarios of why you might want an enclosed emitter. You could also just say, hey, it's more robust, or I don't have to worry about this or that, and it just gives me a peace of mind. If that's your thing, awesome. But like, just because you see somebody review it and say, this is the most, bulletproof thing that you can possibly put on your gun. If it's going to cost double the amount you're going to pay on for something else, and you're questioning, should I buy this, or go get some training, or get a better holster, or whatever it might be, the the answer is simple. Look to what do you need, um, for the purpose you're using it for, and then how can I use that money to better get a better holster, get more training. I don't know. I'm just going to throw this in there because it just popped in my head. Like I had a guy come up to me at church a little ways back, and he was like, "Hey man, my back is hurting me. I don't know. Like I don't know how to carry my gun and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Dude, let me see your belt." That was the only thing I said. Let me see your belt. And he had a normal belt. And I'm like, I go out to my car. I had like a more stiff gun belt, and I'm like, take this, try it out. And he like 2 weeks later, he comes up to me, he's, man, thank you so much. And it was just something simple like that. So I guess what I'm saying is like, sometimes we're looking for like to spend a lot of money on gear because it's going to make us better, more comfortable, or this or that. And it's overkill, and you might not need it. And maybe you look to something else. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess to wrap that one up again, one of the big advantages of the enclosed emitter, especially if you're a concealed carrier, the number one thing I have to deal with respect to my optics on my carry guns is I get lint and
Hmm.
clothing fibers and hair even, like for my, I'm a human, I shed, it's a thing that get in, and usually it just kind of collects in the actual optic window itself. Now I haven't found it to get so bad that I can't actually use the optic. It's maybe distracting to use it, but I'm not that worried about that because I think in a in a in a gunfight, like I'm gonna draw and I'm gonna be like, well, there's the red thing, my red dot, and put it on target and press trigger. And even if the window is slightly obscured by some lint or whatever, like it's like, so what? I should be shooting two eyes open anyway, so I can see the threat, see the target, and see a red dot superimposed on it. It's not gonna make one difference to me either way. But enclosed emitters do have the advantage that they are a little bit easier to clean. Like you can just wipe off, the back glass or the front glass if you have to. I do, keep, and this is a good tip for all of you that do carry red dots on your pistols. They're going to collect some stuff in the window. I regularly blow it out. Sometimes yeah, I can use compressed air, like what you would use to spray your keyboard with, or compressed air like in our shop where we make holsters. We have a compressor that's always hooked up, and I can blast it out really quick. Sometimes I just blow in there with my mouth, and probably about once a week I use a Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol, and I'll actually clean the optic window itself. And that works great. And you can apply a little bit of cat crap is one product, or Z Clear is another product, which are anti-fogging, anti-static agents that help keep that window cleaner, clearer, uh, and also keep it from fogging, and help you know water from like it's sort of like, what do you call it? Rain-X for your windshield, but Rain-X for your
Mhm.
optic. So there you go. One final thing here to discuss, and that is tribalism of thought. And what I meant by this is that, and I think this is true. I think this is like a general societal and cultural problem, Matthew, that that we're becoming more and more divided in our various, whether it's political party, whether it's communities, whether it's whatever ideologies, theologies, etc. It seems that we're just becoming more and more and more tribal, uh, and particularly the thing I'm talking about here is this attitude of, and we've touched on a little bit already in this episode, of it's this or it's that. It can't be both. No way. Like, and I'm in this camp and you're in that camp. Uh, and this is true with respect to talking about tactics or styles of shooting, meaning like defensive oriented training or competition oriented training. It's like, well, you're a competition guy and I'm a defensive guy, or vice versa. Like, these two things are incompatible, and like that's not true at all. And
Mhm.
so that's the final trend I want to talk about today, is this attitude I've been seeing, and it's been going on for a while, but it just seems like it's just worse and worse all the time, of tribalism in thought and in training in the firearm industry.
Yeah, man, this is like, dude, this stretches into every aspect of our lives, right? Like, and I tend to be a very black and white person, at least in like how I view what I do in my life. You know what I mean? Like how I'm going to what drives me. My tendency, and I've been told this by several people, like you see the world kind of black and white, but I also have worked really hard, and it's not always easy because it's not my nature, but to see people and actually listen to what they're saying and understand, like, hey, I might disagree with you 100%, but like I can still talk to you, I can still be kind to you, and and I think the problem is like we've lost the ability to kind of just like disagree and like make our case without trying to shut the other person down. So it's like, uh, yeah, you can have your opinion, and I hope that you believe in that opinion, like that you're not just spouting off, what you heard 5 minutes before, and you believe that what you're saying. But like, I think when it comes down to like these things like tactical shooting versus competitive, or self-defense versus competitive, or close emitter versus this, or whatever it might be, like 1911 versus plastic, Tupperware crap, or whatever it is, and it's like, man, like like you might in your own mind say, this is, I'm black and white on this, and this is why I'm picking a 1911 or a Glock or whatever. But like, you got to at least be able to engage people and bring them into the fold and talk to them and say, hey man, I see you're using 1911. That's not like, I'm not a big fan of 1911s. Why don't you tell me, why do you like 1911s? And listen to them, and be able to communicate with people. I think it just makes us stronger. It makes us be able to help each other, and less like, because I think the more you push somebody away and you just draw that line in the sand, the less ability they have to critically think, because they're like, well, I have to stick to my guns now. And so like, I'm not even going to think about their point because I don't want to be wrong. And so it just divides us. And I just think it doesn't do anybody good in anything.
Yeah. One of the other things, it's also, I think, a failure or an inability to see the nuance in a lot of these things, and to see the
Mhm.
gray areas, and to see where there's crossover. You know, i- there's so few things in life that are black and white. There's so few. I'm not saying they don't exist, but there are few of them. It's almost always spectrums, if you will, of like on the far end it's this, and on the other far end it's this, but then there's all this other stuff in the middle. Um, and that's where honestly the rubber meets the road, and that's where the work gets done is in the middle. And I mean, there's just in talking about um, whether it's tactics or competitive shooting or whatever, like there's so much nuance there. And there's actually, frankly, there are more things that are uh, that are shared, that are common between some of those different, supposed opposing um, views or concepts. There's more things in common than there's what's different typically. Like, it's even true when we just talk about who we are as Americans. Like, even when it's like Republican versus Democrat or whatever, like there's way more things that we have in common as people, as Americans, than what differentiates us.
Mhm.
It's true. I mean, just even talking about men and women, like we are way more similar in so many areas as men and women than we are different. You know, even though we are different, there's no doubt about that. But it's just see what I'm getting at, and so we need to be careful and try to avoid um, thinking in absolutes and making absolutist statements, in being tribal in our thoughts, in and also in like assimilating ourselves into these groups where at the exclusion of everybody else. We will be far stronger as a Second Amendment community or industry if we try to lump us all together where possible and unite on all the common issues that exist, which there are so many, instead
Mhm.
of dividing ourselves up into these little tribes. It's counterproductive, and it's not a winning strategy in terms of just who we are as human beings, and it's not a winning strategy in terms of preserving the Second Amendment.
Agree, man. Agree totally.
So,
Good stuff.
any final words from you?
No, I mean, and look, if you're listening to this and we happen to hit, like, I know somebody commented like, he as a gadget guy, it's hard not to buy the shiny new thing, red dot. I did take a class ago, weeks ago, and brought some ammo on sale. And it's like, if we happen to hit on one of your things, we're not picking on you. It's not it these This is just a conversation. We don't script this stuff. We're having a conversation, just like if we were sitting down and over, some food, and saying, hey man, this is what I think about this. And I like kind of how you ended that topic that you ended it with, or little point, because at the end of the day, it's just our opinion. I look, if you want to carry staccato in a off body carry with all kitted out, and like if you take all of these and just go opposite of what I said, man, I don't have any ill will towards you, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's just an opinion, and it's just we happen to have the mics, and we're
Yeah.
sharing our thoughts, and we're happy to hear people's thoughts, and if you have comments, leave them in there. But it's a dialogue, and at the end of the day, think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and do the best with the information you have.
Yeah, you're spot on. It is just a dialogue, and like in a broader sense, like we should have dialogue between all of us, and have discussions about things, and talk about where we do disagree, and be willing to talk about disagreements in a productive, respectful manner. That's something I think that's actually something I think that leads us further to tribalism in all aspects, is when we refuse to actually talk talk about the commonalities and about the differences. But so many people in today's world, I think, Matthew, would rather run away from conflict, and like, well, that's a hard conversation to have, and I just would rather not have it. And I understand that. And so, hey, and while we're at it, I want to go ahead and preview something we have coming up. Matthew and I were just talking about this the other day, and speaking of opinion, and a lot of what we talked about today was just to present you know ideas, and I also think to ha- encourage people to ask questions about, especially about yourself and what you currently hold and believe to be true. And, and if there's something we said that like resonates with you, either in a positive or negative way, like it's good to use as an opportunity to be like, what do I truly think about this? And Riley made a good point, or Matthew made a good point. Like I hadn't really considered that, and it's like you become better, smarter, stronger, more well-rounded when you ask these questions of yourself. But what I wanted to preview, Matthew, is that coming up, we actually want to start a series of podcast episodes where we actually, I'm going to call it myth bust, the common like shooting fundamentals and what is commonly thought about foundational shooting skills. And so stay tuned for that, because I think some of those discussions will be good, spicy conversations, that will challenge thought and, um, you know, maybe help some of you change your minds, or maybe, who knows, in the process, maybe we'll change our minds about things. You never know.
We might we might lose viewer or listener, or we might gain. Who knows? But that's what we're gonna do, I guess.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. Guys, it's been another episode, great episode. Matthew, thank you for your time today.
Thank
And
you.
today's episode sponsors were ccwsafe.com and barrelblock.com. Thank you for your support of our sponsors and for your support of this podcast. And without further ado, we will bid you adieu until next time. A reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.